Colombia has some of the best food that I've ever had in my life. Before my mission, they kept telling me, hey, on your mission, you're going to have rice and beans every day. And I was kind of dreading it because I was thinking, man, rice and beans, that just doesn't sound great. But I didn't realize that I was used to American rice and American beans, and there is a complete difference from the rice and beans we have here than what they have there. And let me just tell you that the Colombian rice is amazing. It is delicious. It is not just plain white rice that we make in a rice cooker here in America. It is amazing. In Colombia, how they cook it is they first they turn on the stove and the pot, and then they pour in some oil, and they start to brown the rice first without adding any water. Then they chop up some onions, they chop up some garlic, they put it in, and they brown all that up with the oil. And then once that's all kind of brown, then they add some water, and then they just let it sit. And so it cooks. And it's interesting because in America, I feel that when we cook rice, sometimes we stir it and we kind of get it all, it just seems kind of mushy and kind of flavorless and without salt or anything. But in Colombia, they do all that. They add the salt, they add chopped onion and chopped garlic, and then they just let it sit. And it's interesting because it cooks beautifully and it tastes amazing, but not stirring the rice, there's advantages and disadvantages. The advantages is that the rice doesn't get broken up into little pieces. You still get full grains of rice, and it's delicious. But the disadvantage is that when they just let it cook in a pot, the bottoms and the edges of the pot get like the hard black kind of crispier rice. And so you have to really clean your pots well after you cook rice, but it's totally worth it. And I'm never going to stir rice again just because having those full grains of rice is beautiful and it's delicious. So the rice in Colombia, it's amazing. But aside from that, they also have these, Colombia is known for their arepas. And this is, I guess the only thing I can compare it to is like a pancake. But instead of being made out of flour, it's made out of corn. So they get this little pancake-looking thing, and sometimes they'll fry it on the stove, and then they'll cut it open, and they'll fill it with cheese, they'll fill it with meat, and then they'll put this nice little sauce over it that's just amazing. And they'll sell these on the streets for less than $1. And I guess you could say that it's, they have it for dinner all the time, and that you can buy it in the street, so it's even not fast food, but it's amazing and delicious. It doesn't taste like a pancake. I know you're thinking like a pancake filled with cheese. That may be kind of weird, but it's nothing like that. But it's amazingly delicious. They also have empanadas, which are pretty common in the Latin culture, but these empanadas in Colombia, they're filled with rice and chicken or rice and beef, and they are to die for, and I could pay a lot of money to have one of those right now because they're so good. They also have these things called buñuelos, and the best way to describe it is they get some dough and they mix the dough. It's about half dough and half shredded cheese, and they make these little balls of it, and then they fry these balls in oil, and then once they're fried, they take them out and you eat it, and it's just this. I mean, I guess it could taste kind of like mozzarella sticks, but in a ball, and not, the dough and the cheese is all mixed together. So I don't know how else to explain it, but it is amazing, and I love it so much. But the typical food other than that in Colombia is they just have lots of soup. There are two most famous soups that I love the most. One of them is called ajiaco, and that has chicken, and they put sweetened condensed milk in it. And it's to die for. They put potatoes in it. And another one is called sancocho, and they usually make that with hen and with potatoes and other vegetables, and it's super delicious. So Colombian food it's amazing. It's so delicious. I would say one of the best things about Colombian food is the bakeries. When you are walking down the street, it seems that every other block or so, there's a bakery where they just deliver fresh bread at any moment throughout the day, and you can buy, just a little roll, or you can buy loaves, or you can buy however much you want. And they have so many different unique types of bread. Some of it is sweet, some of it is salty. My favorite kind of bread, it was really interesting. It's a bread that they fill it with cheese and with this thing called arequipe, which I guess is also known as it's like a caramel kind of sauce thing, but it's bread filled with cheese and caramel. And it sounds kind of like a weird combination, but it's amazing. It's delicious. Another weird thing that they do in Colombia that may sound weird, but it actually tastes really good, is they put cubes of cheese in their hot chocolate. And, that may sound weird to us as Americans, but let me just kind of explain. In Colombia, their cheese isn't very flavored. It's not as salty and not as flavorful as the cheese here in America. So what they do is when they add the cheese to the hot chocolate, you first drink it, and then you have the cube of cheese left over. And it's kind of weird, but the hot chocolate kind of puts flavor into the cheese. Not chocolatey flavor, but cheese flavor. And so it just gives the cheese more flavor. And it's delicious, and it's amazing, and I love it. So the Colombian culture is a lot different from American culture. The people there, to start off, are really humble. I mean, a lot of them, they make probably a good person would make about $15 a day, and it's not very much. And so they're a really humble people, but they're a really happy people. And that's just something that I learned while I was serving there, is that you don't have to be rich to be happy. You can be happy in any circumstance that you're in. And so I loved seeing, the people, and a lot of the common jobs there would be taxi drivers or bus drivers. And it's interesting because when you're driving along in a taxi or a bus, they will have people there in the streets that, trying to make money, they will either perform for you when you're stopped at a stoplight. It's like you'll stop at a stoplight and then someone will come out into the middle of the crosswalk and they'll start juggling chainsaws or fire or whatever, or they'll go car to car with a windshield washer and some liquid, some fluid, and they'll spray your windshield and they'll start washing it off, and then they'll go by your car and ask for money. Or some people will sell flowers. Colombia is known for having flowers. I would say a lot of the flowers that you buy in your local grocery or store are from Colombia, because they grow a ton of flowers there. So you'll see people selling flowers on the streets, or just selling whatever thing you can find on the streets there when you're just stopped at a stoplight. So I found that was really interesting and really entertaining as well, because they would have a lot of super talented people. You're stopped at a stoplight and you'll see people jumping on each other's shoulders, and you'll see someone, another interesting thing is that you would see someone just frozen on the street, dressed up like a transformer or dressed up like a statue. And then if you walk by and if you drop a coin into the little box out in front of it, then they'll do some kind of animation or some kind of fun thing, some kind of interaction with you. And so I thought that was interesting, that people will literally do anything to be able to provide for their families there. Even if it's in the middle of the heat of day, they will be out there working in the streets trying to get money for their families. Another thing about the Colombian culture that was different, that kind of surprised me, was that when you are in a car and you're closing the car door, you need to make sure you close it soft. Because, here in America, you get out of the car and you shut the door and it's fine, and you can shut it hard and it doesn't matter. But in Colombia, if you close the door harder than, closing it softly, those people will get at you for it. And it will be scary. If you close the door harder than you're supposed to, you'll get yelled at, saying like, "What are you doing, trying to break my car?" I assumed the doors were meant to be closed hard, but I guess you just have to be really careful about closing doors in Colombia. Another thing about the culture is that people just love telling you about their Colombia. They love their culture. They love their heritage. They love their traditional Colombian dress. And wherever you go, you'll listen to the traditional Colombian music, which is vallenato. And it's a music that has accordions, and it's kind of a happy dance music, but they will just blast this music from the streets wherever you're at. And, some people in Colombia, they will have a bigger sound system than their house. That's all they care about. They care about their music and their dancing. And it's just interesting because whatever kind of party you go to in Colombia, whether it's a birthday party or a ward party or any kind of party, they just dance. And they are just a happy dancing people. And you'll go there, and it's funny because people would ask me all the time, they'd be like, "So do you guys dance in America?" And I'd be like, "Well, yeah, we dance a little bit." And they would say, "Cool, great." But it was nothing like how they danced. With the girls, their hips would be swinging, and the guys, their posture would just be super elegant, and they would just do all these crazy things. And it's just something that I really appreciate about their culture, is that they've just really cherished that culture of dancing in their dress and the music that they listen to. And so that's something that I love about the Colombian culture. So Bogota is a huge city. It is massive. There are tons of people that live there, and It's pretty high up in the mountains, and so it's interesting because when I thought that I was going to South America, my mission, I thought I was going to be hot the whole time and just hot and sweaty, but Bogota is not like that at all. Since Bogota is such high altitude, it actually gets really cold there. It never snows, but it is always pretty chilly. And most of the houses that you live in, they don't have heat, they don't have air conditioning. And so I would say that the average temperature would be about 50 to 60, sometimes 70s or 80s when it gets hot in the day. But it's kind of a chilly, mild climate. It would rain a lot. So you would I would say probably the hottest day in Utah is about one of the hottest days in Bogota. And then you'd get really cold days. And nights were always kind of interesting because, you didn't have any heaters, and so you just kind of have to bundle up a little bit. But Bogota it's a beautiful city. There's a lot of stray dogs everywhere, but depending on where you are, sometimes, I remember in one of my areas, there was this a little town on the side of a mountain, and it was just beautiful. They had, all their houses were painted bright different colors, and there was... in that particular part, that little town was actually really dangerous, though. And in our ward, they told us that we could not go there past, 6 or 7 at night, just because they had a lot of gangs, a lot of violence. And we didn't know this until probably about halfway through that transfer that I was in there. And so we would actually go there quite a few times, I guess in the times when we weren't supposed to. And, we didn't see any gang fights or anything, but we would hear stories of where they would just be living there, and our ward mission leader lived up there, but he said that sometimes he would just hear gunshots and he would just tell his family to get away from the windows, and, they got kind of used to it, but he was telling me that the police don't even go up there because there's just so much gang activity, and the police are scared of them. So there are a lot of dangerous places in Bogota, and if you're going there, you need to make sure that, don't hold your camera out in the open where people can see it. People will rob you in the middle of the day. There's a lot of different techniques that I've learned that people use to rob people. There's this one story that I heard of people who they would sell a brand new iPhone on the streets for really, really cheap. And, you go up and you'd buy the iPhone, and you couldn't believe how cheap it was, and so you'd buy it. And then they knew that all of the customers that bought the iPhone would continue down this path, and they'd walk under a bridge. There under the bridge, that same company, I guess, would have other people there to rob the person who had the iPhone. So they would rob the phone back and then continue to sell it. So they would just have all these different clever ways of robbing people. And, they're smart. They're really smart at it. So you just have to be really careful. They can easily get your credit card information or other ways by pretending that they're the police or pretending to be all these things. So you just have to use common sense. Be wise. Don't be out late at night. Don't be walking the street by yourself, and you'll be fine. But Bogota really is a beautiful city, and they have tons of street vendors where they sell delicious food, arepas and empanadas and buñuelos. They're just... If you're going there, you have to try those because they're just delicious. And they're really cheap. You can buy any of the things that I just said for less than $1, and they're amazing, and I miss them a lot. So in Bogota, the usual way of transportation is you either walk somewhere or you ride a bus. They have a train, I guess, a metro called the Transmilenio that you can take, and it takes you to different parts of the city. But other than that, you either have to, if you're going somewhere far, you either have to take a taxi or take a bus or take the Transmilenio. People in Colombia, they're so poor that you really can't afford a car unless you're really, really well off. And that's just something that I've noticed that, they ask about us in America, and, they say, does your family have a car? And it's really a humbling experience to say, oh, my family actually owns 3 or 4 cars. That is unheard of there because they're so poor. And so to get to a place, you have to know where the buses come, and the bus drivers are pretty crazy. The taxis are pretty crazy. It's a pretty crazy place. When you're on the bus, if all the seats are taken, you have to stand up, and sometimes the bus will be weaving in and out of traffic, and it'll kind of throw you side to side. And so it's pretty crazy. And sometimes on the Transmilenio, people will be rushing in and out, and you have to really... hold on to your possessions because a lot of crime happens in that. Well, people will just pickpocket you, or they'll take something, or they'll bump into you, and you'll find out that they took your watch, and so you just have to be careful. But yeah, getting around it's kind of hard. I've heard that in Europe the transportation there is really simple and quick and fast and easy, but in South America they're still trying to get it down, and so it does take a while to get places. So the second area I was in, it was called Bucaramanga, and this city is beautiful. I mean, the temperature is perfect. You walk in and there's pine trees, not pine trees, no. Okay, let me start over. What is that called? Not pine trees. Palm trees. Okay, I'm going to start over. So the second city that I served in was called Bucaramanga, and let me tell you, this city is just beautiful. The temperature is perfect. There's palm trees all around. It's gorgeous. It's still kind of high up in the mountains like Bogota, but it's not as high, and so it's not as cold there. In Bucaramanga, you can get pretty hot there. The temperature ranges anywhere from about, I would say, mid-70s to up into the 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it does get kind of hot during the day. It's a little bit more humid, but it is beautiful there. It's still a pretty big city, but not nearly like Bogota, and it's just beautiful. It's green, and the people there are so warm and so friendly. The people in Bogota, I guess, are kind of more reserved and held back. You'd go up and try and talk to them, and they'd just be busy, work. They need to get to this place. In Bucaramanga, the people just warm right up to you. They're super open, and they love talking to you, and they're just really kind and friendly there. So it's just a beautiful city, and I think if I go back, that is the city that I want to go to. The third city that I was in is a little town. Well, it's a big city, but it's smaller than the other cities in Colombia. It's called Cúcuta. And this city, it is right next to the border of Venezuela. And so I would say 90% of the things that they have in Cúcuta, their produce and their groceries, and basically everything that is sold there comes from Venezuela because it's cheaper in Venezuela. So there are people, the whole industry of Cúcuta is based off of Venezuela. And so there's constantly people going in and out of Venezuela to buy things in Venezuela for really, really cheap, come back to Cúcuta and then sell it, and that's how they make their living. And it's just kind of interesting because since it's so close to Venezuela, there's a lot of Venezuelan culture in there. And it's really similar to the culture of Colombia, but it's just still interesting and unique getting to recognize that culture as well. Cúcuta is really hot. It's not high up in the mountains, and so it gets hot at day, it's hot at night. There's really no air conditioning besides like in the church would be the only place where we'd have air conditioning. But other than that, we just have to rely on fans, or we just have to wait for a cold breeze to come, and it usually wouldn't. But as a missionary, we'd be walking around the streets of Cúcuta all day, and by the end of the day, you were just hot and sweaty and tired. But it's beautiful. I wouldn't say it's very green there, but the people are very nice and very open. I would say it's pretty similar to Bucaramanga in the fact that you go there and the people want to know about you, and they'll talk to you and they'll laugh, and you'll be walking on the streets and they'll yell, "Hey, missionaries!" And there's a really friendly people there, and I think that people are really receptive and open to anything, to talking and to be friends and to learn about the gospel. And so it's great there. In Cúcuta, this was in my last area. So we were asking around, and one of the members told us, "Hey, elders, there's a zoo here in Cúcuta that you guys should go see." And we were like, "Nah, there's no way. Like, this town is too small. That there can't be a zoo here." And he's like, "No, there is. I'll take you. Let's go." And so we're like, "Sweet." So we hop on a bus, and he takes us to this little town, I guess. And he takes us to this house. It's kind of like a farm. And he knocks on the door, and this lady answers, and we're like, "Hey, we're here to come see the zoo." And it turned out to be more of like a big farm, but they did have a lot of zoo animals. They had a monkey, they had turtles and birds and horses and all these exotic and unique animals. And so she opened the door and saw that we were foreigners. And she's like, "Oh, well, to be honest, we're only open on Sundays. But, I see that you guys are foreigners. So if you want, you can pay the fee and you can come on in and we'll let you take a look around." And we're like, "Sweet," as a missionary, if you're going to a zoo, that's an awesome day. So we start to go in, but then she's like, "Hold on, I just need to warn you guys, just be careful in there because, since we're not open today, we're cleaning some of the animals' cages, and we're cleaning the monkey's cage right now, and so he's off running around, playing around, and just be careful because he's angry." And I was like, "What?" Okay, that didn't really register to me because I've never thought of monkeys as being angry. I always thought monkeys as cute and cuddly and nice, and so I kind of didn't really pay attention to that advice. I was like, "Yeah, whatever." So she's just like, but just be careful. And we're like, okay. She's like, he's over playing on the other side of the farm. So if you guys kind of stay over here, you'll be okay. And we're like, great. So I didn't really think about it that much. We walk in and we start taking pictures of all the cool birds, the horses and the turtles and the birds. And we're taking pictures of this really cool exotic looking bird when all of a sudden I hear this pitter patter of feet run up behind me, and the next thing I know is I feel this searing pain in my leg, and I look down and I see that a monkey is just attached to my leg. Its fangs are just embedded in my leg, and it hurts so bad. So I kick it off and I start screaming, and I look down and I see these 2 fang marks in my leg, and I look over and I see that this monkey is just crazy. This guy, he's jumping up and down, baring his teeth. He starts to attack my companion, and he's like scratching at his legs. And so we're like, what is going on here? This came out of nowhere, latched itself onto my leg, and now it's trying to kill us. So we run back to the lady's house, screaming and yelling along the way. We look back over our shoulder. We see that the monkey is coming after us, and he's booking it. And so we're like picking up stones and sticks and throwing them behind us as we're going to try and hit it, because this thing is out for blood. And so we get back to the lady's house, and we're yelling for her to come out. She comes out. She hears all the commotion. She's like, what's going on? And I point at my leg, and I was like, the monkey just bit me. And she's like, oh, well, that's not good. Obviously. So we're just like, what do we do? She's like, let me grab some ointment. And so the monkey, once the monkey sees her, kind of backs off a little bit, and he's kind of circling around us, and he doesn't attack just yet. And so she comes out with this ointment and puts it on my leg, and there's this bubbling and fizzing and the pain and everything. But the monkey he's still there eyeing us, and we're just like, we don't feel safe here, we should probably leave. So we leave from the zoo. And I call up my mission president or my mission president's wife, because she's in charge of all the health of the missionaries. I call her up and say, hey, I just get bit by a monkey. What do I do? And she's like, I don't know what to do. That doesn't happen every day. So she calls up the mission doctor and tells him what happened. And he's like, I don't know what to do. So he went and started researching all this stuff. And then he called us back and he was like, Elder, we need to get you to a hospital, because if that monkey has rabies, and if it bit you, and if you get rabies, you're going to die. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. So we rush to the hospital. This nurse comes out, and she's like, okay, well, we'll help you now. So me and my companion stand up, and she's like, no, just you. And I was like, wait, what? So she has my companion sit down, and I just go with her, which is like tearing my soul apart. You never leave your companion. She takes me into this little room, and she starts asking, so what happened to you? And I was like, well, I got bit by a monkey. So this nurse just kind of starts flirting with me. She realizes that I'm a North American, and I'm away from my companion, just got bit by a monkey, and now this nurse is trying to get with me. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. And so she starts asking me, to speak in English. And she's like, how do you say nurse in English? And so I tell her, and then she's like, how do you say beautiful nurse in English? I can't tell you which was worse, getting bit by the monkey or getting hit on by this Colombian nurse. It was terrible. But 7 rabies shots later, I'm walking out of the hospital, and I just can't think that life can get any worse. When all of a sudden, I get a call from the lady who owns the farm, and she says, Elders, we have a problem. Once that monkey bit you, it just went berserk. It went ballistic. It jumped over the fence, and we've been getting calls all day that the monkey has been terrorizing little kids playing in the streets. So here we are. I just get bit by a monkey, get 7 rabies shots, and I get a call finding out that the monkey is out terrorizing little kids. So for the next couple of days, I just couldn't focus very much. Whenever we were walking out in the streets, I was always looking behind my shoulder, looking over my shoulder, trying to see if the monkey was following us, because I felt like it was. I felt like something was watching me, and I couldn't sleep at night, and it was just such a scary experience. I was hoping that something would come out of it to where I would, get some superpower, maybe turn into Monkey Man, but, that never happened. That would be cool to be missionary by day and monkey vigilante by night, but unfortunately it didn't happen like that. But eventually, we got a call from the lady saying that they had finally captured the monkey. It was back in its cage. Everything was good. So I decided to pay that monkey a little visit and just kind of chat our feelings out. So the next P-Day, we went, and the monkey was in its cage, and as we were walking up to it, once it saw me, it just starts jumping up and down and rattling the cage, and I'm just like, oh boy, oh boy. But I sit down next to it, and we just have this nice little chat. This is a little discussion about how we have our differences, but it's it's okay. And by the end of it, we became good friends. I think everything turned out well after that. But, lots of missionaries can say that they got chased down by dogs or bit by dogs, but I felt that it was a good story to say that on my mission I got bit by a monkey. So, a todos mis queridos amigos en Colombia, primero les amo y les quiero y les extraño muchísimo. He estado aquí en la casa por más de 2 años. Pero recuerdo de ustedes y de su amor y de su bondad y su misericordia